It was a crisp morning in Washington, D.C., the kind of day when the sun managed to push through the clouds, lighting up the city like it had something to prove. Inside the White House, senior advisor to President Donald Trump and head of the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, Elon Musk, sat in the Oval Office. He wasn't just a businessman, he had become a trusted advisor and a vital part of the Trump administration's quest to streamline government processes, reduce waste, and usher in a new era of efficiency. Today, however, Musk wasn't focused on his usual duties. A high-profile meeting was about to take place, one that would change the course of his career and possibly the future of America itself. The door to the Oval Office opened and in walked a shadowy figure, a billionaire tech mogul from Silicon Valley, one whose company had been rapidly expanding in the realm of artificial intelligence. This man, Alex Chambers, had made a fortune by capitalizing on cutting-edge technology, but his methods were controversial. Chambers had been known for his aggressive corporate tactics and his connections to global elites. His businesses had often skirted the lines of legal and ethical boundaries. Elon, Chambers said, his voice smooth but with a touch of arrogance. "I'm glad we could meet today. I have a proposition that could benefit both of us, and it's one that I think you'll find hard to turn down." Musk leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. He had heard rumors of Chambers' interests in government contracts, but he hadn't expected the billionaire to come straight to him. As the de facto head of DOGE, Musk had become a gatekeeper for a vast number of government initiatives. The position came with power but also immense responsibility. He wasn't one to make decisions lightly, especially when money was involved. "I'm listening," Musk replied, his tone neutral. Chambers smiled, clearly confident in the offer he was about to make. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sleek, black folder, sliding it across the desk toward Musk. "Here's the deal," he began. "I've been building a global AI platform that will revolutionize everything from healthcare to defense. But in order to take it to the next level, I need access to certain government contracts that you control. If you help me secure them, I'll make sure you're compensated handsomely." Musk raised an eyebrow, curious but wary. "Compensated how?" Chambers leaned in, his voice lowering as if to reveal a secret. "I'm offering you $1 billion, Elon. A personal payment not tied to any company or government program. Just think about it, $1 billion in exchange for your support in pushing through the necessary regulations. You'll still have the power you want. In fact, you'll be more influential than ever." Musk's expression remained impassive, but his mind raced. $1 billion was a staggering sum even for him. The financial freedom it offered was unmatched, and he knew that, in many ways, it could set him up for life. He'd seen enough of the corruption and power plays in Washington to know that bribes like this weren't uncommon. But he also knew that accepting this kind of offer would go against everything he stood for. It wasn't just about the money. It was about integrity, about doing what was right for the country, not what was right for a few wealthy elites. "Let me get this straight," Musk said slowly, his gaze never leaving Chambers. "You're offering me $1 billion to help you secure government contracts for your AI project?" Chambers nodded, his smile widening. "Exactly. Think of the possibilities, Elon. You could make history. You'd be known as the man who helped bring about the future." Musk's mind whirred. The offer was tempting, but something inside him stirred. A feeling that he couldn't ignore. It wasn't about the money, it was about the bigger picture. Musk had always been driven by the desire to push humanity forward, to explore the stars, to build a future that was better for everyone. If he took this bribe, he'd be selling out everything he'd worked for. It would make him just another cog in the machine of corrupt politics. Chambers, sensing the hesitation, leaned in even closer. "Elon, think about it. You could have anything you want. Power, influence, and yes, even $1 billion. All it takes is a little favor for me. You'd be set for life." Musk looked at the folder in front of him. He could almost feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just about business. This wasn't just about money. This was about the integrity of his work, his role in government, and his future legacy. Finally, he spoke. "I don't need your money, Chambers. I'm not interested in making deals that compromise my values or the future of this country." Chambers' expression faltered for just a moment. Then, with a forced smile, he stood up, gathered his papers, and turned to leave. "You'll regret this, Elon. You can't play the game without understanding the rules." But as he walked out, Musk felt a sense of clarity that only comes with making the right decision. He had turned down the bribe, but in doing so, he knew that his path would be more difficult. It would be a fight, but he was ready for it. The days following Elon Musk's refusal to take Chambers' $1 billion bribe were anything but ordinary. The offer had shaken him to his core, not because of the money but because of the level of influence and power that someone like Chambers was willing to wield. Musk had always been careful about whom he trusted, but this offer represented something different, a systemic level of corruption that reached beyond individual dealings. And now that he had rejected it, the stakes were higher than ever. Musk had spent years working with President Donald Trump, first as an advisor and later as the head of DOGE, a position that gave him an immense amount of control over how the government operated, especially in areas like technological advancements and efficiency. But this power also made him a target for those who wanted to shape policies in their favor no matter the cost. Back at the White House, President Trump was preparing for a meeting that would change everything. Word of Musk's decision to turn down the bribe had spread through Washington like wildfire. Rumors circulated that Musk had become a target of powerful individuals both inside and outside of government. But it wasn't just the fact that he had turned down the bribe that worried people, it was the message it sent. Inside the Oval Office, Trump was deep in conversation with his closest advisors. The room was filled with tension, but Trump was calm, his demeanor unchanged. As the president's senior advisor on government efficiency, Musk had earned the trust of those in power, but now his loyalty was being questioned. Elon Musk turned down $1 billion bribe, one of Trump's aides asked, incredulous. What is he thinking? Doesn't he realize how much power he could have gotten from that deal? Trump paused for a moment before speaking. You know, I've always admired Elon. He's a man who knows what he wants, but more importantly, he's not afraid to make the tough calls. There's a lot of pressure on him right now, and I think this was a test for him and for all of us. But sir, isn't that going to make him a target? Another aide asked. Chambers doesn't strike me as the type to take rejection lightly. Trump chuckled, a rare smile spreading across his face. I've known a lot of people like Chambers. They think power is something you can buy. But Elon's different. He doesn't play by their rules. He's got a vision, and he's got the guts to fight for it. But you're right. We need to watch his back, and fast. As the meeting continued, Musk sat in his office at the Department of Government Efficiency, going over the details of the offer he had refused. The paperwork was still in front of him, a stark reminder of what could have been. But he couldn't shake the feeling that turning down the bribe was the right move. It wasn't just about his personal integrity, it was about protecting the future of the country. However, the consequences of his decision were becoming clear. The following day, news broke that Musk's refusal to accept the bribe had set off a chain of events. Chambers had made it clear that he would not let this rejection slide. In the following weeks, rumors began to spread that a smear campaign was being organized against Musk. His critics were already branding him as too idealistic and out of touch with the realities of Washington. But more troubling were the whispers of a larger conspiracy to bring down the Department of Government Efficiency itself. A particularly damning article was published in a well-known Washington newspaper alleging that Musk's policies were causing widespread disruption across government agencies. The article claimed that Musk's attempts to streamline government operations were too radical and unrealistic and that they were damaging relationships with key industries. The implication was clear. Musk's refusal to play ball had created enemies in high places, and now they were targeting his work. Musk's phone rang. It was a secure line, one that only a few trusted people had access to. He picked it up without hesitation. Elon, it's Trump, came the voice on the other end. Musk took a deep breath. Mr. President, I'm sure you've heard about the smear campaign. Trump's voice was calm, but there was an underlying anger. I've seen the articles. They're nothing more than a bunch of lies. But listen, Elon, this is bigger than just you and me. This is about a system that's been rigged for far too long. You've made some powerful enemies, and they'll stop at nothing to bring you down. Musk felt a chill run down his spine. He had known that rejecting the bribe would have consequences, but the scale of the retaliation was staggering. He had been the one to push for transparency, to expose corruption, to take down bureaucratic inefficiencies. But now, it seemed, the very system he was trying to fix was turning against him. I'm not going to back down, Mr. President, Musk said, his voice steady. I'm not in this for the money or the power. I'm in this to make the government work better for the people. Trump paused for a moment, then responded, I know you're not, Elon, and that's exactly why I trust you. But this is going to get ugly. We need to prepare for a fight. But you can't do it alone. I never planned to, Musk replied. I've got a team of people who believe in this mission. We'll make sure the truth comes out. The conversation ended, but Musk knew this was only the beginning. The fight for the future of government efficiency was about to take on a new, much more dangerous dimension. Days turned into weeks, and the storm surrounding Elon Musk only intensified. As the smear campaign against him continued to gain traction, his reputation was increasingly called into question by political pundits, journalists, and even some of his former allies. The attack on Musk's character had become relentless, and while he was accustomed to the intense scrutiny that came with being one of the world's most high-profile entrepreneurs, this felt different. The stakes were much higher now. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the future of his mission to bring efficiency to the government, and the very foundation of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, was under threat. Musk had always believed in the power of technology to change the world. When he took on the responsibility of leading DOGE, it was with a clear vision of how he could streamline government processes, reduce inefficiencies, and ultimately make the government work better for the people. However, as he quickly realized, the status quo didn't want to change. Powerful interests entrenched in the bureaucracy didn't like the idea of someone like Musk coming in and shaking up their lucrative operations. The articles and media hits kept coming. The most recent one accused Musk of being too ambitious and too disruptive for Washington. The article painted a picture of a man out of touch with reality, a businessman who thought he could fix a broken system without understanding the complexities of governance. But it wasn't just the media that was targeting him. Behind the scenes, there was an ever-growing push to discredit DOGE and Musk's efforts to make government more efficient. Musk's trusted allies in the White House were feeling the pressure too. The president had his own battles to fight, and while Trump continued to express support for Musk, even he was beginning to question the mounting costs of defending someone who seemed to be drawing the ire of so many powerful people. Trump, a man who thrived on being unconventional, knew what it felt like to be under attack. But he also understood the political cost of standing behind someone like Musk. One afternoon, as Musk was reviewing government reports in his office, he received a visitor. The door to his office opened and in walked Sarah Williams, a senior advisor in the White House who had been working closely with him since the early days of DOGE. She was a sharp, no-nonsense strategist who had always been one of Musk's strongest allies in the fight for efficiency and transparency in government. Elon, Sarah said, her voice tinged with urgency. We need to talk. Things are escalating faster than we anticipated. The opposition isn't just throwing mud at you anymore. They're mobilizing. Musk looked up, intrigued but not entirely surprised. Mobilizing how? Sarah sat down, her expression grave. I've been hearing from several sources that there's a full-on campaign to not just undermine your credibility but to push for the dismantling of DOGE entirely. They're framing you as a liability to the president, to the administration's goals. People are already whispering about a possible shakeup in the White House staff, and your name's at the center of it. Musk's thoughts raced. He had always known that creating change in a place like Washington wouldn't be easy, but this was more than he had expected. He had become the focal point of a battle between those who wanted to maintain the status quo and those who believed, like him, that the government could function better. But it seemed the battle had just escalated into something much more personal. Who's behind this? Musk asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Chambers, Sarah said, her voice low. I've been tracking his movements, and it's clear he's orchestrating most of the opposition. He's using his connections in the media, with lobbyists, and even within the government itself. It's no longer just about the billion-dollar bribe. It's about his power, and he won't stop until you're out of the picture. Musk leaned back in his chair, digesting the information. Alex Chambers had been a businessman, but now Musk realized he was playing a much larger game. Chambers was no longer just a tech mogul, he had become a symbol of the old guard, the interests that had always benefited from the inefficiencies of the system. Musk had no doubt that Chambers wanted to take him down, but now it was clear that he wouldn't stop at just one defeat. He would go to any lengths to preserve the system that had made him and his allies wealthy and powerful. I didn't expect this to be easy, Musk said, his voice steady. But I didn't think it would get this dirty. Sarah nodded. Elon, we need to be strategic. Chambers has too much money and too many resources. If we want to survive this, we have to fight back. And fight smart. You can't just focus on your work anymore. We need to rally support from the public, from your allies in the White House, and we need to expose what's really going on behind the scenes. Musk's mind was already working through his options. He knew that playing by the traditional rules of politics wouldn't work here. He had always relied on his ability to think outside the box, to innovate and disrupt. It was time to bring those same strategies to the battle that was now consuming his life. "Get me the data on Chambers," Musk said, his voice firm. "We'll expose him. We'll show the American people what he's really about." Over the next few days, Musk and Sarah worked tirelessly to uncover the extent of Chambers' influence. They dug into his connections, his financial dealings, and his involvement in various government projects. The more they uncovered, the more it became clear that Chambers was using his business empire to push for political power, manipulating key decision-makers to secure government contracts and influence policy. But there was one thing Musk hadn't anticipated: the power of the media. Chambers was working with several prominent media outlets, spinning the narrative in his favor, painting Musk as a reckless outsider who was too dangerous to be in a position of power. The media was becoming a battleground in itself, with reporters taking sides, and the public's perception of Musk was becoming more and more clouded. "Elon, this is bigger than just you now," Sarah warned as they reviewed the media landscape. "We're not just fighting for your job. We're fighting for the future of government efficiency and the trust of the American people." As the battle for the future of government efficiency raged on, Elon Musk found himself at the center of a political storm that was unlike anything he had faced before. The smear campaign had grown into something much bigger than just a few bad articles. It was now a full-fledged attempt to discredit him, to strip away the credibility he had worked so hard to build, and to bring down the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. The pressure was mounting, but Musk was determined not to back down. If anything, the stakes were higher now, and he was more resolved than ever to expose the corruption that was festering beneath the surface of the political establishment. The fight had taken on a new dimension. While Musk's initial refusal of the billion-dollar bribe from Alex Chambers had been the catalyst, it was clear now that the battle wasn't just personal. This was about the future of a government that had been entrenched in inefficiency for far too long. The establishment, those who had grown comfortable with the status quo, had rallied behind Chambers, and he was using every weapon at his disposal to push Musk out of the picture. But Musk wasn't going to make it easy for them. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't beholden to anyone in Washington. He didn't care about the political games that were being played. What he cared about was the truth, and the truth he believed would set them all free. Musk had always been a man of action, and now it was time to act. He and Sarah Williams began to gather the evidence they needed to expose Chambers and his network of allies. They started with the financial records, tracing the flow of money that had been used to manipulate key decision-makers in Washington. It didn't take long for them to uncover a series of shady dealings involving government contracts, bribes to politicians, and illegal lobbying efforts. Chambers had been using his wealth and influence to undermine government policies that could have reduced inefficiency and increased transparency, policies that Musk had championed since the day he took over DOGE. But they needed more. Musk knew that exposing Chambers' corruption would be the key to turning the tide in their favor. The public needed to see the truth. They needed to understand the depths of the corruption that had taken root in Washington and how those who held power had been using it to benefit themselves at the expense of the American people. One evening, as Musk was reviewing the latest findings, Sarah walked into his office with a grim expression on her face. "Elon, you need to see this," she said, handing him a file. Musk flipped open the file and began reading. It was a damning piece of evidence, a series of emails between Chambers and high-ranking members of Congress, discussing how to manipulate key government contracts. There was no doubt that Chambers had been using his connections to secure contracts for his companies, while ensuring that any policies that would have disrupted his business interests were shut down before they could even be introduced. The emails were clear. Chambers was not just a businessman. He was a puppet master, pulling the strings of Washington for his own benefit. "This is it," Musk said, his voice cold with determination. "This is what we've been looking for." Sarah nodded. "We need to get this out to the public. The American people need to know who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes. They need to see the kind of influence that's been corrupting our government." Musk knew that getting the truth out would be difficult. The media, as Sarah had warned him, was already compromised. But he also knew that he had something they couldn't ignore: the truth and the power of technology to deliver it. Musk had spent his career disrupting industries, and now he was about to do the same with the media. He would use every tool at his disposal to make sure the truth was heard. In the coming days, Musk worked with his team to craft a message that would cut through the noise of the media and expose the corruption at the heart of Washington. They released the emails to trusted journalists who immediately began to investigate the story. Within hours, the story broke on major news outlets across the country. The emails were undeniable. They painted a clear picture of a system rigged by powerful individuals who were more interested in their own wealth and influence than in the well-being of the American people. The backlash was swift and intense. Chambers' allies in the government tried to discredit the story, calling it a smear campaign and accusing Musk of using dirty tactics to undermine the political establishment. But the evidence was undeniable and the American public was beginning to wake up to the truth. The outrage was palpable. For the first time in years, there was a real sense that the American people were seeing the political elite for what they truly were: corrupt, self-serving, and willing to do anything to protect their own interests. As the story unfolded, Trump stood by Musk's side, publicly endorsing his efforts to expose the truth. "We've got to clean up Washington," Trump said in a televised address. "Elon Musk is doing the right thing. He's exposing the corruption that's been holding us back. And we're going to make sure this doesn't go unnoticed." The president's support was crucial. It gave Musk the political cover he needed to continue his work and to push back against the backlash that was being mounted by Chambers and his allies. But Musk knew this wasn't over. Chambers would not go down without a fight. The battle for the future of government efficiency was only just beginning. The exposure of Alex Chambers' corrupt dealings sent shockwaves through Washington. The American people were beginning to see the truth and the momentum was on Elon Musk's side. The corrupt network that had been entrenched in the system for decades was starting to unravel, and Musk's refusal of the billion-dollar bribe had sparked a nationwide conversation about government reform, transparency, and the need to eradicate corruption from the highest levels of power. But the fight was far from over. Chambers, wounded and desperate, wasn't going to let Musk and his vision for a more efficient government dismantle the empire he had built. Behind the scenes, Chambers was mobilizing his forces, working to discredit Musk and making last-ditch efforts to maintain his grip on power. The battle had reached its zenith and it was about to culminate in a final showdown that would determine the future of both Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. As the weeks passed, Musk and his team worked tirelessly to maintain the pressure on Chambers. They uncovered more evidence of corruption, each new revelation feeding into the growing narrative that Washington had been corrupted by special interests. Musk's resolve was unshakable. He knew that his mission to reform the government was more important than ever. He was no longer just fighting for DOGE. He was fighting for the future of the country. But as the pressure mounted, so did the risks. One evening, Sarah Williams came to Musk's office, her face pale with concern. "Elon," she said, her voice tense, "Chambers has gone public. He's accusing you of fabricating the emails, claiming that you're trying to destroy the very institutions of government." Musk took a deep breath, realizing that Chambers was escalating the battle into more dangerous territory. The accusations were becoming more personal and the political ramifications were enormous. But Musk wasn't intimidated. He had always believed that the truth would ultimately prevail, and now it was time to prove it once and for all. "We need to take this to the next level," Musk said, his voice steely. "It's time to end this." In the days that followed, Musk and Sarah worked on a plan that would expose Chambers' manipulation and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that his corruption ran far deeper than anyone could have imagined. They had one final piece of evidence, a direct link between Chambers and several members of Congress, showing that he had orchestrated entire legislative agendas to benefit his companies, all while lining the pockets of lawmakers with kickbacks and bribes. This was the smoking gun that would bring him down. In the weeks that followed, Musk's efforts were recognized by the American people. His name became synonymous with integrity and the fight against corruption. The Department of Government Efficiency, which had once been dismissed as a novelty by many, became a symbol of what could be achieved when government worked for the people, not for special interests. And while Musk knew that there would always be battles to fight in the future, he also knew that this victory had changed everything. The American people had seen the truth, and now they were ready to build a government that worked for them. As for Alex Chambers, his empire crumbled to dust. His influence was shattered and his once prominent position in Washington was reduced to a footnote in history. Musk had shown the world that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the truth would always prevail. The final showdown was over and Musk had won.